Episode 323 defined quality as the degree to which the execution of a movement matches the standard set for that movement. The fidelity of performance to intention. The signal that asks, did the rep count, or did I just decide to count it? Having set the standard, you begin with a commitment to excellent movement. All well and good. However, you may end with a running commentary on everything you did wrong. The standard was supposed to elevate the work. Instead, it became a weapon you use against yourself. Today, we address the how, intelligent quality application. Avoiding the need for perfection, or the other extreme, ignoring what went wrong. This is done by defining the standard before the set begins, enforcing it during the set without commentary, and reviewing it after the set without punishment. I call this the honest standard, the smallest version of quality that still holds the line. Hey there, it's me, Core, and you're listening to Exercising Consistency, from Fitness to Flourishing. Before getting into what intelligent quality application is, let's consider what it isn't. Intelligent quality is not constant surveillance. You won't be recording every set or pausing after every rep to critique your performance. That's overkill. It generally leads to performance anxiety and stilted performance. There's a place for recording your movement, getting feedback, and self-critique, but not all the time. On the other end of the spectrum, it's not ignoring what happened. The opposite failure is equally common. The set felt hard. The weight was heavy. You do not want to know whether the fifth rep was high, so you don't look. The logbook records 5 reps. The body adapted to whatever motion those 5 reps actually were. The standard was not enforced because enforcement required honesty you were not willing to give. And finally, quality is not a substitute for effort. Quality without intensity is movement practice, valuable in its own domain, but not training. Quality without volume is mastering a single rep. That's valuable for skill, but not for adaptation. Quality without density is refinement with unlimited recovery, the easiest condition under which to be excellent. The quality that matters is the quality you can hold while the other signals are present. Asking yourself, is my form perfect, is not specific enough. Instead, ask, did I hold the standard that I wanted for this set under these conditions with this weight? Answering that is practical. It gives you context that yields the means to improve quality. Quality enforcement without structure and context becomes self-criticism. Self-criticism becomes hesitation. Hesitation becomes a reluctance to push to the edge of your capability, because pushing to that edge reveals imperfection. When this cycle of inhibition takes hold, 3 things happen. Paralysis of rep counting. The person who evaluates every rep in real time against an unspoken idea of perfect form finds reasons to disqualify reps that were within an acceptable range. The squat was a half-inch high. The bar path drifted slightly. The tempo accelerated on the last rep. None of these deviations are catastrophic. None of them invalidate the training effect. But the self-critic treats them as failures. The set of 5 becomes a set of 3. The training stimulus shrinks with it. Avoidance of intensity. When quality enforcement feels like punishment, the rational response is to avoid the conditions that make quality difficult. Stay at weights where form is easy. Stay at rep ranges where fatigue does not threaten technique. Stay away from failure because failure reveals that the standard was not met. The training becomes safe. The adaptations plateau because the demand was never raised to the point where adaptation was required. The standard drifts. This is the sneakiest failure because it looks like success. The person who never defines the standard before the set begins has no fixed reference. What felt acceptable in the moment becomes the standard. The squat depth that felt parallel in week 1 is the same depth that felt parallel in week 12. But the depth is not the same. It drifted, slowly, imperceptibly. The standard adjusted to match the performance rather than the performance being held to the standard. The common factor here is that quality was enforced without being defined. The enforcement was emotional. The definition was absent. And a standard that is not defined cannot be held. The intelligent application of quality follows the same logic as micro-intensity, adding 1, and micro-density. The definition precedes the enforcement. Here's what that looks like. Define the standard before the set. Not while you're in it, not after it's over. Before, when you're more likely to be objective and honest. The standard answers one question. What must be true for a rep in this set to count? The answer is specific and measurable. Squat to parallel is not specific enough. The crease of the hip drops below the top of the knee is specific. Control the eccentric is not specific enough. 3-second descent on every rep is specific. Keep the brace is not specific enough. No breath release until the rep is complete is specific. The standard does not need to describe an ideal in every respect. It describes the minimum acceptable execution, the threshold below which a rep is not counted. Anything above the threshold counts. The standard is the floor, not the ceiling. Enforce the standard during the set without commentary. The enforcement is binary. The rep met the standard or it did not. There is no narration. No, that one was close. Or almost had it. The rep counts or it does not count. The decision is made after each rep, in the rest between reps, not during the movement itself. This is harder than it sounds. The mind wants to comment. The ego wants to negotiate. The body is tired, and the tired body wants to lower the threshold so the set can end. The discipline is to enforce without arguing. The rep was below the standard. It does not count. Next rep. Return to the standard. Review the standard after the set without punishment. The set is over. The logbook entry is made. Now you inquire. What happened? Which reps failed the standard and why? Was the failure a matter of strength? Is it that the muscles could not complete the movement as prescribed? Or was it a matter of attention? Was it that the standard was forgotten? The tempo accelerated? The brace released because the mind wandered? The distinction matters. A rep that fails because of insufficient strength is data about loading. The weight was too heavy. The fatigue was too high. The standard was appropriate. The execution was attempted. The rep did not count. Adjust the loading. A rep that fails because of insufficient attention is data about discipline. The weight was manageable. The standard was remembered. The execution was neglected. The rep did not count. Return to the standard. The skill you're working toward is the ability to see the rep as it was, not as you wished it was or feared it was. This requires a neutral eye, an observation without interpretation. The rep stopped an inch above parallel. That is observable. The rep stopped an inch above parallel because I am weak is an interpretation. The rep stopped an inch above parallel because I was not paying attention is an interpretation. The interpretation may be accurate. It may not be. What matters is that the observation comes first, and the observation is factual. The neutral eye is precise. It sees what happened without adding a story about what the happening means about your character. That the squat was high is a fact about one rep. It's not a verdict on your discipline, your worth, or your future. The clean observation yields data. The data informs the next choice. The next choice is always open. The final principle of the honest standard is selection. You cannot hold every quality variable at once. A person who tries to monitor depth, tempo, bracing, control, and mind-muscle connection simultaneously will monitor none of them well. Attention is a finite resource. Quality enforcement consumes attention. If you spread that attention across 5 variables, each variable gets a fraction of the focus it requires. Here's the fix. Choose one standard for the session, not all of them. The standard that is most compromised. The one that has been drifting. The one where the gap between what you intend and what you execute is widest. If your depth has been shortening, that is the standard. If your tempo has been accelerating, that is the standard. If your brace has been softening, that's the standard. Hold that one. Let the others ride at whatever level you currently maintain naturally. One standard, held consistently across every working set, produces more quality than 5 standards held intermittently and abandoned when the set gets hard. The signal is not in the number of standards. It's in the consistency with which any standard is held. Focus on only one standard is good training science and practice, but it seems insufficient. The objection is the same one the other micro principles faced. One standard is almost nothing. One rep counted or not counted is almost nothing. How can almost nothing produce meaningful quality improvement? The answer is the same as it was for the others. The single session is negligible. The compounding is not. One standard held for 12 weeks is not one standard. It's the accumulation of that standard enforced across 100 sets and all those reps. The body does not respond to the standard. The body responds to the stimulus. But the stimulus is shaped by the standard. Every rep that met the standard set the intended signal. Every rep that failed the standard sent a different signal. The accumulation of intended signals across sufficient weeks produces adaptation in the intended direction. The honest standard works for the same reason micro-intensity works. The signal only needs to be loud enough to be heard. A standard that is defined, enforced neutrally, and reviewed without punishment sends a clear signal. A standard that is undefined, enforced emotionally, and reviewed punitively sends noise. Quality has now been defined, and you know how to enforce it. What remains is the recognition that quality, like intensity and volume and density, is not confined to the gym. In the next episode, we look at quality beyond the gym. how the signal of doing the work well appears in thought, in conversation, in the execution of a day. The willingness to hold a standard that no one else is enforcing is not an exercise concept. It's a life concept trained with exercise and applied everywhere. Until then, before the first set of an exercise you want to improve, define one standard. Write it down in your training logbook as a reminder before each set. For example, every rep takes 3 seconds on the way down. Then enforce it objectively. The rep met the standard or it did not. No commentary, no emotion. Just return to the standard. That's the practice. If you're ready to upgrade the quality of your consistency, join the Act Score Challenge. Come practice the precise daily reps that turn follow-through into a lifestyle. That's it for today. Catch you next time.